I'm Haley, and my life was a picture-perfect suburban dream until a weekend camping trip with my husband Ethan turned everything upside down. Under the vast, starlit sky, surrounded by the haunting whispers of the forest, I felt a spark of something dangerous, something forbidden, as two mysterious strangers emerged from the shadows. Their presence ignited a fire in me I didn't know still burned, pulling me into a moment of reckless abandon that could shatter everything I've built. But when Ethan's gaze caught me in the act, the look in his eyes wasn't just anger, it was something far more chilling. And now I'm left wondering if he knew this would happen all along. What did he mean when he said he wanted to see me differently? Picture this. The world outside my window is a muted gray. The kind of sky that seems to press down on you, heavy with secrets it's not ready to spill. I'm Haley, 36, caught in the quiet rhythm of a life that looks perfect from the outside. A cozy suburban home, neat little flower beds lining the driveway, and a husband who still opens doors for me after all these years. But beneath the surface, there's a stillness that started to feel more like stagnation. My husband, Ethan, 38, is the kind of man who doesn't say much, but when he does, you listen. He's got this rugged edge to him, a quiet strength in the way his hands move when he's fixing something around the house, or the way his hazel eyes linger on me like he's trying to solve a puzzle he can't quite figure out. We've been married for over a decade, and while the love is still there, it's grown. Distant. Like we're two people sharing a space but not really sharing ourselves. There are tensions we don't name, little silences that stretch too long over dinner, and moments where I catch myself wondering if we've lost something we can't get back. Ethan's been trying, though. I see it in the small things. The way he'll leave a handwritten note on the kitchen counter with just a few words, or how he'll brush his hand against mine like he's testing if I'll pull away. A few weeks ago, he came to me with an idea, his voice low and hopeful, like he'd been turning it over in his mind for days. A weekend camping trip, just the two of us, out in the countryside far from the hum of our daily grind. A chance to step away from the endless cycle of work, bills, and muted conversations. He painted a picture of fresh air, open skies, and nights under the stars, a reset for us. I'll admit, my first instinct was to say no. I'm not exactly the wilderness type. Give me a good novel and a glass of Merlot over dirt and insects any day. The thought of sleeping on the ground, surrounded by nothing but nature's unpredictability, made my skin crawl. But then I saw the spark in his eyes, a flicker of the man I fell for all those years ago, the one who could convince me to do just about anything with a single look. So, I said yes, hoping, maybe even praying, that this could be the thing to bridge the gap between us. Watching Ethan pack for the trip was like seeing a kid get ready for an adventure. He was meticulous, almost reverent, as he laid out our gear in the garage. A small, weathered tent that looked like it had seen better days, 2 sleeping bags rolled tight, a portable stove that he swore would make the best campfire coffee I'd ever tasted, and just the bare essentials. No extras, no frills. Back to basics, he said with a half smile, his voice rough with a quiet excitement I hadn't heard in ages. Now, here we are, pulling up to our campsite late in the afternoon, the tires crunching over gravel as the world outside transforms into something wild and untamed. The golden sunlight spills through towering pines, painting everything in a warm, honeyed glow. I step out of the car, and the first thing that hits me is the sound of a nearby river, a gentle rush that seems to hum beneath the stillness. The air smells of damp earth and pine needles, sharp and clean, so different from the stale familiarity of home. It's peaceful out here, but there's a heaviness to the silence, like the forest is holding its breath, watching us. Every now and then, a bird calls out, a sharp trill that echoes and fades, leaving the quiet even deeper than before. Ethan and I get to work setting up camp, unloading the gear from the trunk with a kind of clumsy determination. The tent is a puzzle neither of us seems to remember how to solve. I fumble with the poles, trying to slot them together, while Ethan mutters under his breath, half laughing as one end keeps collapsing. "You'd think we'd never done this before," he says, his voice lighter than I've heard in months, and I can't help but chuckle too, even as my fingers slip on the slick fabric. We're a mess, tripping over stakes and tangling the guy lines, but there's something almost sweet in the struggle, like we're building more than just a shelter. Finally, after what feels like forever, the tent stands. Lopsided, but ours. I wipe the sweat from my brow and catch Ethan looking at me, a small, unguarded smile on his face. For a moment, it feels like we're on the same page, like the distance between us might just be a little less out here. As the afternoon stretches on, we gather firewood, trudging through the underbrush with our arms full of dry sticks and branches. Ethan shows me how to stack it just right, his hands steady and sure as he arranges the kindling in a neat pyramid. "Gotta let it breathe," he explains, his tone patient, almost tender, and I nod like I understand, though I'm mostly just watching him. We build a small fire, the flames crackling to life as the scent of smoke mixes with the earthy air. I brew coffee over the fire, using that little stove he swore by, and yeah, it's bitter as all get out. But there's something satisfying about sipping it from a tin mug, sitting side by side on a rough log. We don't say much, just let the warmth of the fire and the coffee settle between us. It's not the kind of closeness that comes with words, but it's something. A tentative thread pulling us back toward each other. I let myself lean into it, just a little, feeling the simplicity of this moment wash over me like a balm. Out here, away from everything, it's like we might have a chance to rediscover what we've been missing. The fire crackles softly as the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across our little campsite. Ethan decides to head down to the river to refill our water bottles, his figure disappearing into the twilight with a quiet promise to be back soon. I stay by the fire, poking at the embers with a stick, letting the solitude of the forest wrap around me. The night feels alive, buzzing with unseen things, and I'm alone with my thoughts. The flickering light dancing on my face. That's when I see them, two figures stepping out from the edge of the trees, their silhouettes tall and ominous against the glow of the fire. My breath catches as they move closer, emerging into the light. They're men, both in their early 30s, with weathered faces and tanned skin that speaks of long days under the sun. One's taller, with a scruffy beard framing a sharp jawline, the other's stockier, his intense blue eyes catching the firelight in a way that sends a shiver down my spine. They've got heavy backpacks slung over their shoulders, the kind that look like they've carried them through miles of wilderness. I don't know them, but they introduce themselves in low, gravelly voices as Caleb and Travis, locals who know these woods like the back of their hands. Their movements are slow, deliberate, almost too careful as they approach the campsite. Their eyes scan the area, taking in every detail, the tent, the fire, me, before settling on my face with an intensity that makes my skin prickle. They ask if they can pitch their tents nearby for the night, explaining they've been hiking for days and just need a place to rest. Their tone is polite, almost too polite, and their expressions are etched with exhaustion, the kind that tugs at your sympathy even when your instincts are screaming to say no. I hesitate, my fingers tightening around the stick in my hand, feeling the weight of being out here alone while Ethan's gone. But there's something in the way they stand, shoulders slumped with fatigue, that makes me nod despite the unease curling in my gut. I tell them it's fine, just for the night, and point to a spot a short distance away. They thank me with small, tight smiles and set to work, their movements efficient as they unpack their gear and raise their tents under the dimming sky. I watch them from the corner of my eye, pretending to focus on the fire. But every rustle of fabric, every clink of metal keeps me on edge. Once they're settled, they come over to join me by the fire, offering to share some herbal tea from their supplies as a gesture of thanks. I accept, more out of politeness than desire, and we sit there, the three of us, with the flames casting flickering shadows across our faces. At first, the conversation is stilted, full of awkward pauses and forced small talk about the weather and the trails. But as the tea warms my hands through the tin mug, something shifts. They start telling stories of their travels through the forest, their voices weaving tales of hidden clearings and forgotten paths that make the wilderness sound like a living, breathing thing. I'm impressed, despite myself, by how much they know, how they seem to belong to this untamed place in a way I never could. Laughter comes easier, bubbling up unexpectedly, as Caleb, the taller one, recounts a near miss with a bear that sounds too wild to be true. Travis, with those piercing blue eyes, chuckles low in his throat, and I find myself relaxing, just a little, into the rhythm of their company. Caleb leans forward at one point, his hand brushing my shoulder as he points upward, drawing my gaze to a constellation shimmering in the vast, star-strewn sky. His touch lingers a moment too long, warm through my jacket, and I feel a jolt I can't quite name. Travis shifts closer on the log, his knee brushing against mine, the contact deliberate in a way that makes my pulse quicken. I should move away, should put distance between us, but there's a charged tension in the air now, a pull I can't ignore. The night air feels electric, charged with something I can't quite name, as I sit by the fire with Caleb and Travis. Their presence, so close, stirs a restlessness in me, a hunger for something beyond the boundaries I've lived within for so long. My heart races as I let myself linger in that forbidden space, caught in a moment that feels both reckless and alive. The firelight dances in their eyes, and I'm drawn in, losing track of time, of reason, until the world narrows to just the heat of the flames and the unspoken pull between us. It's a dangerous game, one I know I shouldn't play, but the thrill of it, oh, it's intoxicating. I let myself fall into it, just for a fleeting second, allowing the rush to wash over me like a tide I can't fight. Then, a sharp beam of light cuts through the darkness, slicing across the clearing like a blade. My breath catches, and I freeze, the spell shattered in an instant. It's Ethan, stepping out from the shadows near the river's edge, his flashlight trembling slightly in his grip as it lands on us. The glow illuminates the scene, me, disheveled, too close to Caleb and Travis, the air thick with a tension that doesn't need words to be understood. I see his face in the harsh light, pale as the moon above, his eyes wide and unreadable. There's shock there, raw and undeniable. But something else too, something deeper I can't decipher, a flicker of pain or maybe betrayal buried beneath the surface. My stomach twists into knots as I watch him, waiting for the explosion I'm sure is coming. Caleb and Travis sense the shift immediately. They pull back, their movements quick and awkward, as if they've just realized the line we've crossed. They mumble half-hearted apologies, their voices low and strained, before retreating to their tents on the far side of the clearing. Their footsteps crunch against the pine needles, fading into the night, leaving me alone to face the storm I know I've brewed. I stand slowly, my legs shaky beneath me, my clothes rumpled from sitting too long, too close. My breath comes in uneven gasps as I meet Ethan's gaze, searching for something, anything, to tell me what he's feeling. I expect anger, shouting, a flood of words to match the fury I imagine simmering inside him. But there's nothing, just silence. He stands there, rooted to the spot, his hands clenched into fists at his sides, the flashlight still pointed at the ground now, casting long, jagged shadows across the dirt. He doesn't move, doesn't speak, and the weight of that quiet is heavier than any yell could ever be. I open my mouth to say something, to explain, to apologize, anything to break this suffocating stillness. But the words stick in my throat, choking me, leaving me stranded in the space between us. I'm left staring into his hazel eyes, those same eyes that used to look at me with warmth, now cold and distant, like I'm a stranger he doesn't recognize. I search for a reaction, a crack in the mask he's wearing, but there's nothing to grasp onto. Just that unbearable silence, stretching on, broken only by the crackling of the dying fire behind me. Each pop and hiss feels like a countdown, marking the seconds as they drag into what feels like eternity. My chest tightens, my palms sweaty despite the cool night air, and I can't tell if I'm more afraid of what he might say, or of this endless quiet that seems to swallow everything whole. Inside, I'm a mess of conflicting tides. Guilt crashes over me like a relentless wave, pulling me under with the weight of what I've done, what I've risked. I think of all the years with Ethan, the quiet moments of tenderness, the promises we made, and I hate myself for letting this happen, for jeopardizing something so precious. But there's another part of me, smaller but defiant, that doesn't regret it. That part craves the freedom of that stolen moment by the fire, the rush of feeling alive in a way I haven't in so long. It's a selfish. After that unbearable silence by the fire, I couldn't just stand there under Ethan's unreadable gaze any longer. I turned away, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs, and stumbled toward the tent. The night air felt colder now, biting at my skin as I moved, the weight of what had happened pressing down on me like a physical force. I sat by the fire for what felt like an hour, though it could have been minutes. Time had lost all meaning. My mind replayed every second of that charged moment with Caleb and Travis, the way their nearness had ignited something reckless in me, and then the stark, shattering instant when Ethan's flashlight beam cut through it all. I poked at the dying embers with a stick, watching the last flickers of orange fade to gray, unable to face him as he lingered somewhere behind me in the dark. I didn't hear him move, didn't hear a word, just felt the heaviness of his presence like a storm cloud waiting to break. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I stood, my legs unsteady, and crawled into the tent, the canvas flaps rustling softly as I slipped inside. The air in there was thick, not just with the musty smell of old fabric, but with a tension so dense it seemed to cling to my skin. It was suffocating, like the space itself was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. I could barely make out the shape of Ethan in the dimness. He was already lying in his sleeping bag, turned away from me, his back a rigid wall of silence. His breathing was steady. Too steady, like he was forcing it to stay even, holding himself together by sheer will. I hesitated, my hands trembling as I zipped the tent shut behind me, sealing us in this tiny, fragile world where everything felt on the verge of collapse. I eased myself down onto my own sleeping bag, the fabric crinkling under me, every sound amplified in the stillness. Lying there, so close to him yet feeling miles apart, I stared at the curve of his shoulder, the faint outline of his form in the near darkness. My chest ached with a mix of dread and desperation, the need to say something, anything, to break through the barrier between us. My voice came out as a whisper, shaky and raw, barely audible over the distant hum of the forest outside. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I don't know what happened out there. I didn't mean for it to go that way." I braced myself, expecting a sharp retort, a flood of anger, or even worse, more of that crushing silence. My fingers clutched the edge of my sleeping bag, waiting for the storm I deserved. But then he moved. Slowly, deliberately, he turned to face me, the rustle of his sleeping bag like a thunderclap in the quiet. In the faint moonlight seeping through the tent's thin fabric, I saw his eyes, those hazel depths I'd always thought I knew so well, glinting with something I couldn't name. Not anger, not quite pain, but something deeper, more complex, like a wound laid bare. When he spoke, his voice was low, steady, almost unnervingly calm, each word measured as if he'd been rehearsing them in his mind. I wanted to see you differently. And I did. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. My mind spun, grasping at the meaning behind those words, each one landing like a stone in still water, sending ripples through everything I thought I understood. See me differently? What did that even mean? My pulse raced as I tried to piece it together, a sudden, dizzying realization creeping in. Had he planned this somehow? This trip, this isolation, had it been more than just a chance to reconnect? Had he anticipated something like this? Maybe even wanted to see how far I'd go when pushed outside the safe, predictable lines of our life. I felt the ground shift beneath me, like the very foundation of our marriage was cracking open, revealing something I wasn't sure I was ready to face. What do you mean? My voice was barely a breath, trembling as I forced the question out, my eyes locked on his, searching for answers in the shadows of his gaze. But he didn't reply, not right away. Instead, he just held my stare, the weight of his silence pressing down on me heavier than ever. Then, with a slow exhale, he turned away again, his back to me once more, leaving me with nothing but the echo of his cryptic words and the restless hum of the forest outside. I lay there, wide awake, my mind racing through the night, replaying every moment, every look, every touch by that fire. Sleep never came, not really. Just a fitful drift between guilt and a strange, lingering thrill that I couldn't shake, no matter how much I tried to bury it. When I opened my eyes the next morning, the world was cloaked in a dull, overcast gray, the kind of sky that feels like it's mourning something it can't name. I blinked against the dim light filtering through the tent, my body stiff from the hard ground beneath me, my mind still tangled in the events of the night before. I sat up slowly, the sleeping bag rustling around me, and noticed Ethan's spot was empty. His bag was rolled up tight, already packed, like he couldn't wait to erase any trace of our time here. I crawled out of the tent, the cool morning air biting at my skin, and found the campsite eerily quiet. Caleb and Travis were gone. Their tents, their gear, their very presence vanished as if they'd never been here at all. The only evidence they'd existed was the faint imprint of their stakes in the dirt and a lingering unease in my chest. They hadn't even said goodbye, hadn't left a note or a word. Just slipped away with the dawn, leaving me to wonder if I'd imagined the intensity of last night, the way the firelight had seemed to weave us into something dangerous and fleeting. Ethan was already at work near the fire pit, his movements mechanical as he doused the last of the ashes with water from a canteen. He didn't look up as I approached, didn't acknowledge me at all, and the silence between us felt like a living thing, thick and unyielding. We started breaking down camp together, though it was more like working side by side than with each other. I folded the tent, my hands fumbling with the fabric, the poles clinking awkwardly as I tried to stuff them into their bag. Ethan packed the sleeping bags, rolling them with a precision that felt almost angry, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on the task. We didn't make eye contact, didn't speak, just moved through the motions like strangers who'd somehow ended up in the same place. Every rustle of nylon, every snap of a buckle, seemed to echo in the stillness, amplifying the distance between us. I wanted to say something, to bridge this chasm, but every time I opened my mouth, the words withered before they could form. So, I kept quiet, letting the mundane act of packing up become a kind of shield against everything we weren't saying. As we worked, I couldn't help but reflect on what had happened. I don't regret it, not fully, and that scares me more than I can admit. There was something in that moment by the fire, something wild and untamed, that woke up a part of me I didn't even know was sleeping. A hunger for life, for risk, for the kind of raw, unfiltered feeling I'd forgotten I could have. It came at a cost, I know that. Maybe a cost I can't yet measure, but I can't deny I liked it. I liked the way the stars above seemed to watch without judgment, their cold light bearing witness to a version of me I'd never dared to explore. I liked the rush, the forbidden edge of it all, the way it made my blood sing with a vitality I hadn't felt in years. Even now, with the weight of Ethan's silence bearing down on me, I can't shake that memory. It's like a splinter under my skin, painful but impossible to ignore, a reminder of what I'm capable of craving. We finished packing in record time. The campsite stripped bare. Nothing left but the flattened ground and the echoes of what happened. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.